Hey everybody, it's Micah Mitchell with Memberium, and I have with me Kyle Newton of TribePUB. Kyle is one of our new Platinum partners, and I'm really excited because he's got some information to share with us. But first of all, Kyle, thank you for being here. Hello.
It's great to be here. Wonderful to be with you, Micah.
Awesome. So you and I had a lengthy conversation the other day, and I was blown away just by kind of how broad your knowledge is. But today, for a minute, I think we're going to be focusing in on some of what you do specifically with Memberium and for people who want a membership site or a course. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, kind of a little bit of background about you, and then dive right into it if you don't mind.
I'll certainly do it. Micah, it's been a lot of fun using Memberium. We've been using it for about 7 or so years. And what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd jump into share a little bit of a slide deck that I think will be helpful. Really what I want to make sure is that, not only people get to know me, but more importantly, they get value from, this presentation. And so what I was thinking is I would focus on really why a Memberium agency partner like myself would use Memberium to really build enterprise level platforms. So I'm going to go through a quick kind of set of slides here, and we'll take a look at really the benefits of that. So let's jump right in. The key takeaway that I'd like for people to have is they can and should use Memberium as a core system within the WordPress ecosystem to develop an enterprise level platform. And that'll make more sense in just a few minutes, because what's interesting about me, Mike, is I don't really come out of the email marketing automation space. I come out of the early development platform space where we were developing platforms way back in the early 2000s. So I come more from what happens when someone arrives on the website. And we've been developing those enterprise level platforms long before WordPress was around. So I had to actually go through the process of transitioning from 4.5 million lines of code to a WordPress centric ecosystem with Memberium really at the core of that. So it kind of gives me a unique experience in using Memberium because I've been doing this in really a lot of different ways. So there's really 3 types of people I think that would be watching this video and that would get value out of it. It's the Memberium developer. I've got Memberium developers working for me. I'm a Memberium developer, albeit the guys that work for me are a little bit more technical savvy. I'm the founder and kind of do the sales and marketing more. But, it's the average developer that's developing either for startups themselves, for clients all the way up to agency levels. It would be the startup and growth user that's using Memberium. That's whether they're just starting out, starting their coach or their coaching side or their learning side or wherever it may be. And then there would be the enterprise user, and that would be an organization or business that's already using Memberium at scale. And they may be interested in learning a little bit more about how they can really expand into enterprise level. And really there's 3 outcomes of some of what I want to share today. For the Memberium developer, hopefully this video will stimulate them to take their use of Memberium to the next level. I think that's one of the things that I've found kind of in the Memberium community is that people don't really take it to its extent. There's a lot under the hood that people really don't use and maybe even don't even visualize what can be done with Memberium. So hopefully that the startup growth user, hopefully this will help answer some questions whether Memberium's a right fit for them and whether they want to expand their business using Memberium and using, really WordPress and the whole ecosystem facilitate their growth. And then the enterprise user, as these enterprise users come to me, they're always kind of nervous, like, do you think WordPress will handle this? Do you think Memberium will handle this? Can we really scale up? And so hopefully it'll answer some of those questions for them. A lot of the rest of the slides aren't this wordy, but I think it's important for us to find what is an enterprise level platform, especially when we're talking about the WordPress ecosystem. So a WordPress powered enterprise level platform is one which the software empowers and drives every aspect and department of the business from one unified hub. In short, the platform for all intents and purposes is the business. And that's kind of the business we're in. We're in the business of actually automating the business, not just automating the marketing, but automating the business as well. And what separates an enterprise platform from a standard running platform are 2 things. First, it's the level of architecture that's needed to build out the full ecosystem. We're going to look at that in just a few minutes. Memberium is at the core of that. And so when you think about enterprise level architecture, that membership experience is key. And if you don't have a strong membership experience that can scale and expand over time, everything's going to fail. And then second, it's just literally the number of contacts and members that are using the platforms, but then that also corresponds with how many people are actually in the organization running the platform itself. As an example, typical platform with 100K to 1 million contacts is really what I define as an enterprise level platform. They've got a successful monetization model that's attached to whatever they're selling, education, coaching, whatever they may be selling. And they typically have 10 or 20 different systems running inside that WordPress ecosystem with Memberium at the core of that. And they typically have 5 to 50 people that are working in the business, from marketing to customer service to support. So when you think about an enterprise level platform, you're not just working with one guy who's got a course or one coach who wants to scale up. You're thinking departmentally, you're thinking business systems, you're thinking biz dev, and you're thinking 20 or 30 core components that goes into running an online business. So when you look at your WordPress ecosystem from that lens, that's really what begins to separate an enterprise level platform, is the complexity that goes into it. Now, obviously we want to minimize complexity, but complexity is a really key. Now, why consider enterprise level and when to consider it? There's people watching this video like, I'm not enterprise level, I'm not, this really isn't for me. But here's the point. I have never had a startup customer come to me and say, oh, yeah, we hope to grow to 100 members, or we hope to grow to 1,000 members. They all are like, want to be 1 million members within 60 days from now. Most of them are ready to go from 0 to 1 million. And so when do you consider it? That most every client needs to consider that. And the beautiful thing is, lay a foundation for enterprise level early on, and then everything else goes from there. So let's jump in a little bit about my company. My company is TribePUB, and the name really means something to me. And we're all about helping organizations grow, monetize, and serve their community. When we talk about tribe, we're talking about the tribe leader, right? That's the person that's leading it up, and that can be anybody from organizations to brands to authors to coaches, consultants, speakers, creatives, influencers. Anyone can be a tribe leader. And then when we talk about a pub, we're talking about a platform unified business, and really that's the key, is how do you create a complete WordPress Memberium at the core that brings all of these dispersed business processes into one unified operating system, into one dashboard where your clients can actually bring their business into one place. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of why I'm qualified. I hit a little bit of this at the beginning about talking about enterprise level platforms. And it really comes back to, I've been in this for now 22 years, 20 plus years. I've had over 100,000 paying members. Those are actually subscriptions that I've had to my own SaaS over the years, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of paying members for my clients. We've had over 5 million contacts in our various CRMs that we've used over the years for our clients, 260 plus organizations. And we built 4.5 million lines of code to really build our own custom CMS, CRM, and all of that. And we'll unpack that in just a minute. My whole foray into building membership sites started way back in year 2000. Us IT guys were a little bit worried about Y2K back in the day. But, at the turn of the millennia is when this started in a really unusual way. It started in a living room with a group of people. Now, this picture, but I found one on the internet that looked like this, but this is similar. And the reason my career started in the living room is because I got pulled into a family member's presentation of a network marketing company. Now, I had been a pastor, I'd been a golf pro. Everybody wants to recruit a pastor and golf pro into network marketing. And so I got hit up with a lot of opportunities, but I was always able to say no. But this was a close family member. They begged me to come sit in the living room for them to push play and watch a video. And so I said yes to that, just to really honor that relationship. Now, this whole thing isn't going to be about network marketing. What it's going to be about is that network marketing was really the first industry that had a distributed group of members that needed a centralized hub to grow and monetize their business, their content, their community, and their commerce. And so by getting involved in that industry in the late 90s, early 2000s, it actually catapulted me into the membership space in an early adopter kind of way. And so I became that guy in front of hotel rooms and in living rooms, drawing out compensation plans and all of that. And I did that for about 3 to 6 months, where I was actually presenting the business opportunity, because I fell in love with the concept that an entrepreneur could start a business for a few $100 and build it online and do different things like that. But very quickly, I fell out of love with the direct sales network marketing industry because I found out that 97 out of 100 people actually failed at the business. And I just couldn't really morally stand up and present this business opportunity with that level of failure rate. So I had two options: either leave the industry or work to fix it. And so the decision I went down was to try to fix it. I just went way deep in learning everything about direct selling, what it was to build online, what was it to build a network marketing and direct sales business. And I came across this statement that really resonated with me from Robert Kiyosaki that says, the richest people in the world build networks, membership sites, right? Or some form of network, and everyone else is trained to look for work. And I already had made the decision I want to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't have the concept of building a networked business or a business that really built other networks. And that really stood out to me. And so the way that the network marketing worked at that time is you got a bunch of people in your living room, you put in a CD or DVD or a VHS tape, and you played a video. And what I originally found was that people were not successful because they had to like ship out these, like physically mail, if you can remember that, Micah, VHS tapes or DVDs to their neighbors, and then pick up a phone. Hey, did you watch the video? Did you watch the video? Did you watch the video? And that was really ineffective. And it cost a lot of money to buy all of those and mail all of that. So my first innovation was the idea of let's move away from the concept of VHS, CD, DVDs, and let's move this whole presentation online. Let's actually create it in Flash Media. And we were one of the first companies in the early 2000s to begin to stream Flash Media over dial-up modems. And dial-up modems back in the day, at least where I'm at right now, I'm already struggling with the fixed internet here, even in year 2022. But here where I'm at in Kentucky, visiting my in-laws today, we only got about 14.4 kilobytes per second on a 56K modem because the lines were so bad. We were able to actually stream these videos over a 14.4 kilobyte per second modem. And that was awesome. It was like just the most breakthrough thing ever. And so we had tons of companies coming to us wanting us to make their videos. Well, that then led to the whole concept of me needing to put together a team of developers. The guy there on the left, the blonde, is David Prater, still with me today, my senior programmer after 22 years. The guy in the black hair is my brother-in-law. He was doing all of the development. We have a security guy, software guys, different ones put together. And we started creating our first, what we called back in the day, replicating website or personal web page. We now call them membership sites. Think Amway.com/Kyle, or whatever network marketing company you were part of. You'd have this / it would be your little slice of it. So once we had the video, we had to actually put it in a personal web page. We had to create a paywall for people to pay to be able to distribute these videos to people. And we had to do all this in the early 2000s when there were no merchant accounts, when there was, people were making membership sites based on directory structures versus dynamic data tables and different things like that. And so February 20th, 2001, we actually launched our very first site, the ITI site, as you kind of see there. And actually it was a pretty clean looking site for 2000. If you remember back, those sites back in the day looked like yard sales, blown up, just stuff everywhere. Our sites were really clean, really nice. We were really into it. But the main point was we were actually sending these videos out. So we had to build our own content management system, our own replicating system, our own membership databases, and hundreds of thousands of lines of code in, we got to where we could create a replicating website or a membership site. But then came the idea that if we're sending these videos out, we need to create a CRM. And not just any CRM, we needed to create a one-to-one CRM. So in 2002, I don't know why it was February as well, but a year later, I filed a patent on what we called a teamwork communication system. It was a one-to-one CRM, and there's some interesting words in this abstract. I won't get too geeky on it, but the whole concept was, when we think of an Infusionsoft, that's a one-to-many. Even though we can use Memberium now and these types of tools to create a one-to-one experience on the platform, typically it's a one-to-many type platform. This was a one-to-one CRM, but then it would pass data upline and downline. The co-creator of this, the co-patenter, Willard Barth, was one of the first Anthony Robbins coaches. I had Anthony Robbins at his organization coming to me early in the 2000s because we created what we called a neural dynamic profile. Because when I sent a link to these videos, what my CRM would do is not only track that I sent out the video, it would track when someone came, what pages they watched, what videos they watched, how long they were on the site. And then we'd create a neural dynamic profile that would dynamically begin to change the text to their decision strategy, their communication strategy, and create not only a psychometric profile, but a demographic profile and a neural dynamic profile as well. So it was really advanced stuff for the early 2000s. And so that added another million or so lines of code as we began to build the CRM, the autoresponder, all of those types of things were really, really powerful. We then, 2003, I wrote a book on actually building network marketing with systems, with platforms. And then in 2003, I came across this book, even though it was originally published in 2000. And this book changed my whole paradigm of the internet. This was one of the first books that really saw the future of what the internet was going to be, which was going to be more of a media company, that literally the organizations need to organize themselves less hierarchically like traditional businesses and more like movie productions, where you have a director, you have an executive producer, and you look at the story and how you're telling the story and how you're building a community. So I really started applying a lot of those principles and community building principles to the platforms that we were building. By 2005, we were doing these long sales forms, sales letters, and we had grown to about 200 or so companies. I started speaking all across the country at different events to large audiences. And, by 2008, we were actually into gamification. We were doing points, levels, badges. We had e-learning. We had our own social media platform by that point. We had our own coaching system. We just really had everything by that point. And it was roughly around 2008 that I realized that my dream had come true, that I was actually building networks, and not just my own networks, but networks for other people. And then I learned that, back in the day, the gold miners heading out, to strike their fortune, you won't remember that guy's name there, but you'll remember who sold them the picks, the shovels, the Wells Fargos, the Levi Strauss, and all of that. So I decided, for the rest of my life, I'm going to sell picks and shovels to those business owners and entrepreneurs who really want to go out and really build a business. And so to kind of bring this into context, right? We launched our first platform in 2000, or 2001. We launched our first patent on a one-to-one CRM in 2002. Published a book on the whole concept in 2003, and now we're looking at WordPress wasn't even around 2003, MySpace 2003, Facebook 2004. This was the very early days, so we were cutting our teeth on some really cool stuff. So by 2008, we had reached 100,000 paying customers, 1 million contacts, 200 organizations, and had achieved that 4.5 million lines of code. And at that same year, in 2008, I read this book, and now you kind of maybe get an idea of why I call my company TribePUB. This whole concept of tribes and what Seth laid out, because I was a big fan of Seth Godin from 2000, 2002, when he was writing Permission Marketing and Idea Virus and Purple Cow and all of that. I love the way Seth looks at marketing and telling stories. And so when he came out with this book, Tribes, it really resonated with me. And also in 2008, I read this book, Dream Giver, which really talks about the thread of your destiny. And I really began to realize, because we were really doing super well as a company at that time, how can I go beyond just servicing network marketing and direct sales companies? How can I go into serving all different types of networks? And by this time, people in 2008 are used to social media. They're looking to build their hubs, more and more people online. And so we really began to branch out and, go beyond just network marketing into missionary organizations. Anybody that had a distributed network that really wanted that centralized hub. And I really began to fashion myself as an enterprise architect that uses system thinking to develop online software platforms for networked organizations. And then, because I could choose the types of organizations I would work with, I would only work with ones that had a clear moral operating field, because you can have a lot of customers that are doing things you really don't want to support. So I really began to work with just customers that did that. And so 2008, I was fortunate enough I could retire. And so I experimented. I did a lot of personal coaching and development just to really grow that area. I farmed. I married a farmer. And so we did a lot of organic farming. We did a lot of aquaponics, hydroponics. We were homeschooling our kids. We were, just did a lot of fun, did a lot of things, kept a few select clients, developed some systems and models, and spent time with my family. And those little kids who were little in 2000 had grown up roughly by the time we got to 2015, and they started showing interest in really working in the business. So in 2015, I began to retire that 4.5 million lines of code and transition to the WordPress ecosystem. And that looked a little bit like this. I'm the guy in the green shirt, and the two guys in the white coats were my developers who were saying, we are tired of maintaining 4.5 million lines of code. Let's move over to the WordPress ecosystem. And I was not a fan of that. I was a big custom development only guy, and I went into this whole process absolutely kicking and screaming. But we were able to map it out. We were able to take a look at the WordPress ecosystem and really find a way to make it work for us. Obviously we were already using DigitalOcean and the different hosting providers that were available out there. We really looked at WordPress. Can that really be a CMS? Can it have can it have the security? Can it have the SEO? Uncanny Automator? Can it have all the different automations that we need inside of it? Can the CRM work for us? And we work with all the major CRMs out there. Obviously, Memberium and Infusionsoft is the primary one that we use, but we work with them all. And then we looked into all the different elements inside of the WordPress ecosystem. Can it have an affiliate system? Even Affiliate WP can even go into network marketing and multi-tiered systems, so we can use it for that. There's WooCommerce subscriptions and memberships. There's BuddyBoss for the socials. So we replaced all of this 4.5 million lines of code, as well as all the data lakes reaching outside. And we decided that we're going to put all of our custom code when needed in a platform operations dashboard. And that's where we then do the reporting, the data metrics, the engagement tracking, all of that can't be done in one individual plugin. We put all that there. But this diagram for this purposes looks more like this. While typically I kind of say when I'm showing all the different CRMs, I put that here, but this one is actually the more accurate one for how our platform works, where Memberium is also at that core, because Memberium is really driving the membership experience. It's driving the complete how we interact with customers, how we move them forward, how we move them through the engagement process, and really then how we push back to the CRM and nurture all of that. So if Memberium wasn't at the core of all of this, then all of this would break down, and we would have to have a tremendous amount more of custom code in our POD to handle what we normally had to do with custom code. So we started with a few of our large enterprise level clients, began to move them over. This is David Barton. He's got about 250,000 contacts in his database. He had a very complex system. And again, we have to look at more than just the WordPress ecosystem. So we had to work on unifying his system, but we brought him into Memberium. This is Jim Cockrum, the largest 90,000 Amazon sellers take his courses. We switched him to Infusionsoft and Memberium, moved him over to BuddyBoss Social Learner back in the early 2015, 2016s when the full BuddyBoss platform wasn't available. Redid over 90 courses, several hundred hours of education material. We took Terry Savelle Foy, kind of a personal development type person, retooled all of her courses, moved her into a multi-threaded Infusionsoft Memberium, a partner care center. This is a not-for-profit organization. So we used all of the auto logins, just a ton of sophisticated Memberium configurations to really thread a very unique partner care center for her that really helped her track donations, her sales, and threaded all the different sites that she had available. A lot of work we did for Glenn Beck and his archives, a lot of things we did for the Shaq movie. And 29 million copies of the book sold, 50 million in the revenue at the box office, or 100 million, very successful. And now more recently, John Osseroff and NeuroGym, which I think is really close to the Memberium story. I came to find out in meeting with you, Micah and Ben, that actually Memberium started because David and the team was building for John Osseroff. So he's now one of our clients, and we brought him over to a BuddyBoss platform, moved all of his learning material, did a lot of really sophisticated things with Memberium on how we deliver the material, and then even how we converted all the memberships over. We can talk a little bit more about that later. A lot of real interesting things. And now that the kids are kind of fully engaged in the business, Upwork profile about a year and a half ago, and now we're ranked number 1 in Upwork for BuddyBoss, and the top 3 for LearnDash, Memberium, top 1 for GamiPress, top 3 for membership sites in the US. And so at the end of the day, and kind of in conclusion of this part, I define myself as an architect. My parents have really never known what I've done all these 20 years. They really can't explain it. But my dad would always say he's got to be selling drugs on the internet. You can't make that much money, making websites, so that's the best he could do. But, for those who care, I like to say that I'm an architect. And at the core of that is architecting enterprise level platforms. How do we solve the problem of a very large organization that needs to, really scale up? And there's just been no way that we could possibly do that without Memberium. It would have left, well, I don't know how many lines of code are in Memberium, but it would have left a similar amount of lines of code in our platform operations dashboard if we had to replace everything that you and your team have done. And so I'll kind of stop the share there. That's a little bit of an introduction, what we want to do. But I want to end by just thanking you and thanking Ben, thanking David, thanking the whole team there at Memberium, because you made my transition from 4.5 million lines of code into the WordPress ecosystem so smooth. There's no way we could have done it without Memberium. There's not another comparable membership plugin or system out there. And so when I saw the agency certified partnership opportunity, I jumped right on it because I'm a Memberium fan for sure.
Dude, Kyle, there's so much there. I'm not sure where to start into it, but first of all, I think it's so cool that you are one of those people who did make the transition, because I still know people who are old school developers who are like, I don't want to use WordPress. I want to build it myself. I want to own it. I want to whatever. And, I know there's trade-offs to both, but it's interesting to me that your developers pulled you into WordPress because they were experiencing the headache. It wasn't you, trying to push them that way. So that's really cool. And have you found things you can't do, or do you just pretty much jimmy rig whatever you want?
There's very, very little that we can't do with Memberium. As far as the core membership concepts and what you need to do in your user experience and moving a person in, from the funnel into the landing page through the user experience, because we create heavy gamification and engagement, and we really use the short codes and the content restrictions very heavily to create a very custom user experience through the process. There's nothing of that we can't do with Memberium. There's the most of our current custom code is really what we call in our platform operations dashboard, and it really has to do with just reporting. The reports we can't get from just Woo or just GamiPress or just whatever. So we have to bring that data in and present it in a different way. But as far as just the membership aspect of it and really creating a really smooth and awesome user experience, there's very little that we have to do. As a matter of fact, you've added a lot from the standpoint of the auto logins and what we can do, whether that client is on a custom solution, as long as they're connected to Infusionsoft. Obviously Capture Campaign would be the same, but as long as they're connected to Infusionsoft and Keep, that transition process is becoming so much easier than what we have to used to do custom wise because of your auto logins and different elements of that. So it's actually made our job much easier without any downside.
Gotcha. That's cool. One thing that also intrigues me quite a bit is how you think of Memberium as the core of your system. Even though I'm, all about Memberium, I would think of the CRM as the core of my system, but I'm kind of rethinking it based on what you're saying. Why do you believe it's the core versus some other piece?
Well, I come more from the, platform space. I'm a big fan of Michael Gerber and his book, E-Myth. And in E-Myth, he breaks down all business processes into 3 processes: lead generation, lead conversion, lead fulfillment. Because I came out of the direct sales space, I never had to worry about lead generation. Everyone else did the lead generation, all the network marketers and whatever. So I never really developed that skill. I developed the skill of lead conversion, lead fulfillment. Conversion meaning what happens when they hit the platform. I'm not that interested in all the funnels that get them there. I'm interested in once they come there, what are they experiencing and how do we convert them long tail, and how then do we move into that fulfillment? And because I came at it from that paradigm versus a marketing automation paradigm, I look at it more from a platform centric lens than a marketing centric lens. So I think it's just a bent from where I came from. And then secondarily, the CRM obviously is important, but I don't find that most of my clients spend most of their time in the CRM itself. They spend their time actually engaging in the social communities, developing the courses, looking at the user experience and monitoring that user experience from the platform lens. Now, obviously they do spend time with their marketing, they track all their conversions, they do all of that, but the larger enterprise clients are doing both. They're not just interested in that front of funnel metrics. They're interested in what happens when they're on platform and all of the retention aspects that have to happen on platform well past the funnel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually, if you're especially like with the fulfillment end of it and that being Memberium. And it does have a lot of the sorting rules, but that's really interesting when you talk about how marketing wasn't, or the lead generation process wasn't as big of a focus. That makes a lot of sense. For somebody, so you talked a lot about the enterprise end of this, right? Mm-hmm. For the person who's more just getting started, like let's say they're an expert, but they haven't developed the following. So they know their stuff. They should mm-hmm. be making content, but they haven't, really made it and developed a following yet. Is that somebody that you can help? And if so, how?
That's a great question. We work with organizations from startups all the way up to enterprise level organizations, and so we help all different types. the point with that person is that a lot of the basics of building out the platform is the same, whether you're doing a startup or whether you're doing an enterprise, meaning you're going to have your WordPress, you're going to have Buddy Boss, you're going to have in my world, I really focus heavy on Buddy Boss. I do have clients that don't have Buddy Boss, but it's really a niche that really focused on, because engagement and social community is really the way to create that long tail subscription retention. Churn was something I've had to deal with for 22 years. How do you keep a monthly recurring member monthly recurring? And that's delivering ongoing value. So as you think about that new content creator, new influencer who's looking to develop a platform, they're going to need a CRM. They're going to need a membership tool. They're going to need a place to deliver their learning and their social community. And they're going to need that all to be unified in one place. And the beautiful thing about what we're doing is you basically got Infusionsoft Keep, and then you got your WordPress ecosystem. And if we build the WordPress ecosystem correctly, there's nothing outside of that ecosystem that you need. You don't need to go to Teachable, Kajabi, and do 20 other things and try to Zapier it all together and send it into an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. And the crazy stuff that clients come to us is crazy. The number of things they've done to kind of duct tape things together. We can start you out in that right place. And that's kind of where I talked about on that slide. Why enterprise? Why now? You need to think enterprise when you start. Doesn't mean you have to have an enterprise budget, but you at least need to lay your foundation correctly. And it's not too expensive to lay that foundation correctly. Then as you scale, you haven't created, data leaks, process leaks, and other things that are going to cost you way down the line. So we help them evolve scale, but we make sure that we put them on a really good foundation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's like the economics of somebody just starting and saying, well, I'm going to buy a cheaper platform, or I'm going to save money by doing this and that. It's like, well, a couple $100 a month for better systems, like the systems we're talking about, even if it does cost a few $100s a month, is a lot cheaper than moving it. Even if you pay a couple $100 a month, even for a year and a half, it's still cheaper than the move from the crappy system to the real one,
100%. The switching costs are really what gets you in this business, and it's not just, the cost of the software. It's all the business processes, the time waste that most of our clients are in right now. They have to hire a whole nother admin. They have to, focus their time on operations versus marketing, sales, and fulfillment of whatever their primary product, service, or training is. You're tripping over pennies today, to save and to make, hundreds and thousands of dollars, per client, in the future. We always recommend, I really just don't recommend someone who's got any plan of scale or growth at all to not start with Memberium and Infusionsoft and keep. We do have obviously some members that are there and they're very sold on that concept, but I do put my hand up and I warn them, remember, you said you want to be this many members by this amount of time. If you go down this route and you're being a little chintzy now, this is going to cost you later. You're deferring, and that cost is going to be much greater than laying in a good foundation now. So I try to warn them. Not everybody listens, but I try to warn them as best I can.
Yeah, it's interesting how you are framing this, because the more I'm thinking about it, it's like, well, whoever designs content that's not for the masses, nobody. Very cool. And go ahead.
And one caveat to that, Micah, that I think is important is that I've not really had too many clients that have the problem with the price point of Memberium. And it's not because I have large enterprise level clients. The reason I put Upwork out there, because all my clients were coming through referrals and whatnot, was to give my kids a place to kind of test out their skills in a safe place, not with a large enterprise level client. And so that was the first time I've really had smaller clients come to me. I haven't had a non-enterprise level client come to me in years, so Upwork has kind of given us a taste of that. And so when I would interview these startup clients, it wasn't the $100 a month or $89 a month or this or that and the other. It was their concern of the complexity in the future, now and in the future. And when I could show them the system and show them how easy it was to operate, and then the level of automation that it can give them, and the trade-off of those automations versus manual processes if we didn't go down this route, that was really the objection. It wasn't a price objection. It was a complexity objection. And so once I took complexity and de-risked it, and made it less complex for them in their minds, and they could see it, it was not a problem at all then for them to make that step.
And is that de-risking and taking out the complexity? Is that your operations dashboard doing most of that, or how do you do that for people?
It's a great question. It's a combination of both. Yes, it's the dashboard and it's all of that. It's me showing them examples. I used the PowerPoint slides when I was doing that. When I'm selling or introducing a new client, I use slides very heavily. I give them the visuals. What I found was, even myself coming into the WordPress ecosystem, it was intimidating to me, a guy that had built a company that had 4.5 million lines of code and a SaaS that touched every aspect of the business, right? Because there were just so many unknowns and I didn't know, there's this level of just fear that people have coming in and transitioning. What I've done, and what I encourage all people, all developers and all agencies listening to this, is our job is to take the fear out, is to take that concern out. So when I can show them and come and speak very confidently about what we're going to do and how we're going to lay this out and how simple it is going to be once they get into it and use it, that really just kind of settles them down. So it's really just being confident with the tools and expressing that level of confidence to them and showing them, letting them see, because that's the number one thing. People come in, and whether it's BuddyBoss or LearnDash or Infusionsoft Keep or Memberium, and they're just like snowblind because there's all these buttons and all these things to click. And I really narrow it down to them and show them, okay, these are the few 4 or 5 things you're going to be doing on a daily basis. If you do this outside of Infusionsoft and Keep, here's the complexity, all the other plugins I have to give you to accomplish what these 2 things can do for you, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, I got it. So that's kind of where it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because it is overall a simplification if you can get over the initial learning curve, right? So are you still recruiting? So I know your business is growing and stuff. Are you still recruiting, looking for people who know Memberium to come join your team?
We are actually. I had 2 interviews today of people, and thank you for the referrals. We are because we're, my skill set is sales and marketing, of platforms and those types of things. And so since we've, even outside of Upwork, the level of referrals that we just get, and then the things that are actually, I had no expectation that Upwork was going to be as awesome as it was. And we're expanding out to, in the next month, out to 3 other freelancer platforms. We're developing our profiles out there. And so, yes, we're looking for really good technicians, people that feel very comfortable with Memberium and Infusionsoft Keep and ActiveCampaign, because we were getting more and more clients, wanting to go that route. And what I find, like even in the interviews today, Micah, is that each person has their own skill set. Like I interviewed one person and they come actually more from a developer custom bent. And so I gave them this 26-page scope document to take a look at, and it's interesting to see where each of these Memberium developers are coming from. Some of them come more from a custom bent, others really look at it from a marketing bent, others come at it with a good blend, from that standpoint. And I need actually all 3, because we do a lot of custom development. We got to sometimes make Memberium do things it can't do, or the ecosystem connect with other things in the ecosystem. And so I'll definitely be working with one of your referrals when I'm thinking, from the custom standpoint. Another person is really process oriented, and you need that when you're running an agency. You need all of those roles. I actually have 8 roles inside of my agency. I've got platform architect, platform developer, platform technician, platform specialist, platform support, platform marketing, platform sales, and each one of those is a different role with a different skill set. So we're looking to fill all of those, and all of those people have to have, Memberium and Infusionsoft and ActiveCampaign experience to play an architect and to build and develop and support in those roles. So if anybody's interested, reach out to me. We're always looking for great talent in any of those areas.
Cool. Yeah, and I know people are out there who do know how to build a lot, and they don't really love marketing and selling. And so hopefully there's a good fit out there, multiple good fits. So what have we not talked about that you think would be good as part of the introduction, to the Memberium community for you?
I think we've hit a lot. I think the main thing, and I had a really great Memberium Infusionsoft technician working with me, has taken me, this is one of the reasons why we're hiring. I had one guy that was just super phenomenal. He's in the community, really great guy. And he really brought this point up, which I thought was really good, is that when we look at the Memberium community, when we talk with other Memberium developers, when I talk with my clients, because a lot of my enterprise clients actually come to us actually already using Infusionsoft Memberium. So I get to hear what their experience is. What I find is that it is just, there's a gap that I hope that we're going to kind of close over this next year or two, which is how do you apply business logic and business processes to Memberium? Memberium has given us so many tools inside the toolbox that I find that my clients aren't using those tools or not using them in proper ways. And other consultants, and because obviously I'm receiving their work, the people who built it, and they're not using it to its full extent. And so one of the things I really want to encourage people to do is really kind of put on their business development hat and their business logic hat and really start solving problems. That's typically what I do every day in and day out is I'm solving problems. I'm listening to a client and they're telling me they want this and this and this to happen and this user and that user experience to happen. And I'm keeping my mind open to the complete toolbox, but I always go back to simplicity. If I can do it with Memberium, if I can do it with the core tools, I don't want to add to that. And what I see is that people don't use Memberium and then they kind of band-aid an approach or whatever when there was a much more direct approach. And so I think it's just really leveling up in our skills of Memberium and using Memberium for all that it can be done. That is really where those listening to this that are Memberium developers or agencies really want to kind of hone their skills is that level of logic, business process connection. Final point. When I'm talking to clients, I think that's really what they like. I want to encourage all of our agency people out there to really think about it from a biz dev. Most of my job is also business development. When you're dealing with enterprise level clients, you have to think about their business process. Let me give you an example. I have tons of contractors and I've got some of them that they can only see their slice of the pie. They're only their slice of the platform. So I'm talking to them about a solution and they'll just go off on this long rant about how this process will solve the problem. And they don't see that how this is going to tie into the operations of their enterprise level client. They don't really understand how that trickles through the business of actually running an online business. And so one of the greatest skill sets I think people can also do is really understanding how to interact with clients, to be empathetic with their processes, to be empathetic with their fears and where they are in their process, and don't build or push them beyond that. Don't do bad processes to support a bad paradigm, but learn how to communicate well with them and guide them into better processes and be aware that those processes affect multiple departments. And you've got to take that into context. And that's one of the things that in working with multiple different contractors is I've always had the hard time of not being the communication person with the client, because you've got to learn that rhythm of a client. I oversold, undersold, confused, got way too geeky and nerdy in the early years with clients. And I've just, worked with enough clients now. I know how to get into that rhythm with them of their comfortability where they are and communicate with them. And that's a big area of growth that people can step into as well.
That's such a interesting point as far as, not overselling the client, because it's so easy in, thinking you're going to help to suggest, oh, well, we did this for this other client, it might work for you, versus, getting down to their core needs, the business logic, and solving those problems so that they can free up people's time, use less systems, become more efficient. I love all of this. Well, thank you so much. How do people, whether they're a prospective client for you or a contractor or even just another technology partner who wants to maybe work with your company, what's the best way for them to connect with you, Kyle?
Just TribePUB.com, TribePUB.com, and Tribe Platform Unified Business, TribePUB.com. It's the best place. We got contact forms. You can learn more about us there on our website.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so grateful you're in the program. I look forward to talking with you more about a bunch of things. I know we have a lot of common interests and getting really nerdy with the membership sites as well. So thanks so much.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Micah. Thanks.